Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Wiz Khalifa, titled Blacc Hollywood. You know, last time I talked about weed rap in any capacity was way back last year when I reviewed Sonic Dopamine, the album from Cousin AJ, which is more of a layered and intriguing concept album about getting stoned than anything else. Even though I haven't really revisited that album much since, I still respect it a lot for some interesting wordplay, some great production, and a fair amount of ambition behind it. It's a pretty solid project. Yeah, we're not getting any of that here. Wiz Khalifa may have started off with some vestige of street credit and nuggets of a little bit of insight on some of his mixtapes, but that degenerated very quickly when he burst onto the scene in 2011 with his major label debut on Atlantic with Rolling Papers, quickly becoming the mainstream accessible weed rapper with a strong focus on very pop-friendly hooks. And you know what? To his credit, as much as Wiz Khalifa wasn't a technically strong MC at all, he occasionally managed to pull together some decent hooks and lightweight production that was honestly pretty tolerable and I could pretty much handle. I'll admit it, Roll Up was surprisingly sincere, halfway decent song there. And its collaboration with Snoop Dogg and Bruno Mars' Young, Wild, and Free, that was one of my favorite hit songs of 2012. I can admit that, even though Wiz Khalifa was probably the weakest performer on that track. And yet, ever since that high point, Wiz Khalifa has just seemed to get less and less interesting, both as a technical lyricist and with regards to his content, focused on ever shallower weed and luxury rap. And what's frustrating about him is, well, we already got a Snoop Dogg here who can step up to the mic with effortless charisma and marginally better wordplay. And Wiz Khalifa always seems to pale in comparison with the competition. But even as his verses got more vapid, he tended to have solid enough hooks on his songs like Work Hard, Play Hard, and We Own It, the song he did with 2 Chainz, even though he seemed to be succumbing to serious auto-tune abuse. And look, let me make this clear. The opening singles from Blacc Hollywood were not giving me anything close to good feelings on this album. Hell, I was planning on skipping it altogether until you guys started requesting it. But then I thought, hey, I gave Kid Ink and Iggy Azalea a chance, and they both managed to surprise me in a good way, so maybe this record isn't all that bad, right? Ugh. Here's the thing, I want to like this album because I honestly don't dislike Wiz Khalifa, at least in terms of his personality, but if I needed evidence that he's really missing his mark as an artist, Blacc Hollywood would be the perfect example, because this record feels unfocused, confused, and a lot less fun than it really should have been. And while I know that some of it's not his fault, he's a commercial rapper, and that means he's stuck saying and doing certain things if he wants to remain popular in any way, enough of his problems eventually circle back to, well, his own problems, Wiz Khalifa's problems in a bad way, which means I really can't give this album a pass as much as I might want to. So okay, let's talk about what I like about this album, and honestly there's not a lot. When your best guest verses on this album are Juicy J and Nicki Minaj verses they could have dropped in their sleep, and Chevy Woods trying to bring some visceral grit to the tracks, you're running into some pretty big problems. But honestly, I didn't mind when Ty Dolla $ign handled a few of the hooks. Hell, if I'm being embarrassingly honest, I didn't even really mind it when Wiz Khalifa jumped on the hooks because he's got a certain real earnest quality to his voice that shows that he's really trying to sell some of this material, and that means something for me. And on most of his weed raps and on the Love Jam Promises, he kind of comes close to making it work. The odd thing about Wiz Khalifa is that he knows his way around a catchy hook, some of which are grounded in some pretty decent keyboard melodies, which are what you need to become a halfway decent pop rapper in today's day and age. But where the album immediately starts losing steam, almost immediately, right out of the gate, it's in his tone. Instrumentally, this album tends to fall into the very dreary synths and hi-hats of modern hip-hop that are trying way too hard to sound dark and serious, albeit in a hazy, smoking, washed-out way, with some of the drifting strings trying to add some gravitas and power. And you know what, there are points where it kind of works. The strings melody is about the only thing redeemable about We Dem Boys, and that string synth balance, it works pretty well on Promises, KK, House in the Hills, and So High. And when the production gets a little punchier, a little bit more diverse and lighter, Wiz Khalifa can sound even better, like on the Dr. Luke produced track Staying Out All Night, or on True Colors, the collaboration he did with Nicki Minaj. But unfortunately, most of the instrumentation is much more concerned with sounding eerie and dark and moody. And like I've said time and time again, it doesn't work well if you're gunning for the sort of trap instrumentation presentation with a party vibe, or to relax, or to smoke and not confront your internal demons. And it especially doesn't work when you've got Wiz Khalifa on the microphone, who doesn't have a single hardcore bone in his body. See, here's the thing. I get the feeling that very early on Wiz Khalifa's career, he jumped into the lane of being a weed rapper because, well, nobody else was doing it remotely convincingly in the mainstream. And that gave him a unique facet of his identity of which he was at least proficient. He was tolerable there. Hell, So High works on a blissed out sort of way, and KK takes the luxury rap template and applies it to Wiz Khalifa getting his own brand of pot, which is at least a different topic for a song. But I get the feeling that Wiz Khalifa feels really pigeonholed in this role, and on songs like House in the Hills, he goes off about how he feels like he's being judged and marginalized for being a pothead in the mainstream, when in reality, he's got more to say. There's more to him. He's not a thug. And throughout this album, you can tell he's trying to step towards other topics in hip-hop. The call-response party vibe of Weed and Boys, the player vibe of Ass Drop and the Sleaze, and even this sort of brand of luxury thug thing that he's trying to do on Raw are still down. And you know what? It's kind of amazing how lousy he is at this. Most of this comes through in a broad lack of imagination in his wordplay. Wiz Khalifa has never really jumped on the psychedelic angle for marijuana, which makes his weed rap just a little bit basic in terms of its description, but basic goes to straight up incoherent, corny, and completely unconvincing when he's talking about other topics. He lacks the hyperbole of 2 Chainz or the creativity of Lil Wayne, neither of which are selling points or standards of quality for the rappers in question. Let me stress this, but at least they feel like they fit tonally with the topics, where Wiz Khalifa just comes across as really uncomfortable on these subjects. It's worst on Raw, where he tries to make sounding like booking flights with Miley Cyrus sound raw and with zero self-awareness against this skin-crawlingly chintzy synth line, or on Ass Drop, which features the chipmunk voice effect, and it's only saved from being awful by a not terrible chorus melody. And look, I've said it before and it bears repeating. Wiz Khalifa, he's not strong as a technical MC. Between rhyming words for themselves, extremely basic punchlines, and syllabic rhyming, and oftentimes dropping the poetic meter altogether, he can come across as really sloppy and really incompetent behind the microphone. Just saying. And this comes back to the biggest problem with this album. If Wiz Khalifa, if he doesn't want to be marginalized for being just a pothead on his songs, and he wants to say something more, maybe he should rap about something more than just weed, or do it better. Or when he does change up his subject, he can bring something new to the table that I haven't heard 100 times or more here. The one direction that I can conceivably see Wiz Khalifa going in is more sincere relationship songs in the pseudo R&B lane with Drake, because honestly, he wouldn't really be a bad fit for it, at least in my opinion, because the instrumental tone was lighter, and that earnestness could be a really big selling point for him. But then again, when you have songs like the anti-gold digging song Hope, or Ass Drop, or any of the other awkward posturing towards women on this album, like on Weed and Boys, look, you get judged by what you put out, I'm sorry. A running theme of this album is that Wiz Khalifa works hard, and yet it comes so easy because he apparently deserves success. Okay, aside from making that assertion making him a lot less likable, maybe he's just not working as hard as he thinks he is, and as a weed rapper, honestly, if he's working hard, he's doing it wrong. So you know what? In the end, I don't hate this album, but I do really wish it was a lot better, because I see potential here. You can make the argument that it's not Wiz Khalifa's fault that hip-hop production is much darker and bleaker, which is a real terrible fit for his brand of very pop-friendly weed rap, but I'm not letting him off the hook here, I'm sorry. In other words, this record's a 4 out of 10 and no recommendation. Wiz, I can appreciate that you've got your own lane. I can respect that. If you want to be the weed rapper, go ahead, but try working smarter, not harder. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at this year, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.